Mary Ellen Trapelafond, in her December 16th letter, essentially demanded a briefing when it comes to practice change. I understand the ministry issued a response to that letter. What was the response?
Well, I responded, first of all, by expressing some surprise, because I was under the distinct impression, given our discussions and our correspondence, that that matter had been resolved in favor of the process that we had put in place. So I responded outlining the various pieces of communication that had occurred between us, what we had agreed to, and finished off by asking that given that the information sharing meetings, had not yet had a chance to get underway, that really we ought to give that process a chance to work before we went back to what I considered, and she did at the time we discussed it, to be a rather cumbersome and kind of ad hoc process that we were engaged in prior to that.
So what was the response to your response? Or have they dropped the request?
Probably the easiest thing to do would be to give you a series of correspondence. I imagine you're going to request that. Well, I mean, we've tried to point this in the direction of a process that will work for both of our offices. And again, that's something that the representative has agreed to, and I think it's also just a very wise and balanced way to approach it.
So this is resolved? There is no further demand on the part of the representative to actually
Well, I can't speak.
Have that briefing?
I can't speak for the representative. My urging and my position is that we ought to give this newly established process a chance to work. They've only had one meeting. They're scheduled to have those meetings monthly, and I think given the stature of both of the staff people in her office, in mine, who are involved in those meetings, I think there's every reason to expect that they'll be successful in finding the appropriate way in which we can provide an ongoing flow of information around practice change, around other matters. So I still take the position, and I would urge the representative, and have done in correspondence, to give this process a chance to operate so we can evaluate whether or not it's effective. One
final question. She seemed to suggest in earlier correspondence that the deputy was the only person who could give that briefing. That's what the ministry has said in the past, that the deputy is the only person who can give the briefing on practice change.
Well, I think part of what happens when we start to discuss this is that there's an issue of semantics around what a briefing is. For a full briefing in the true sense of the word, in terms of what would happen either for me as a minister or for the representative, what you do is you bring in the staff person who is the closest to that subject, who can has the capacity to be able to cover the kind of details necessary for a briefing. That would be my Deputy Minister, Leslie Dutoit. It doesn't mean that there are not other staff people who are fully capable of passing on lots of information, lots of details, tracking down answers to questions. And in fact, in the first meeting that took place in January at the information sharing meeting, quite a substantial amount of information was provided to the representative. In one of her more recent letters, she acknowledges that. They made arrangements to have discussions around questions that might be brought back by the representative's office. So that's not a briefing, but it certainly is a fulsome way of providing information and also providing opportunities for dialogue and to answer questions.